Stock Exchange today. Obviously, you joined a panel earlier in the day, so I'll try and pick your brain on some of the topics that were brought up there and some of the discussion points. But to kick us off, I know that during a recent conversation we had around emissions goals, you said to me that Charlie Munger once said, "Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome." Obviously, companies need to have quantifiable medium-term goals on greenhouse gas abatement. But if they want to actually have those goals taken seriously by investors, they obviously need to incorporate these into management or compensation schemes and so on and forth. I mean, when it comes to management compensation schemes and linking these with emissions reductions targets, where do you begin? How do you implement these incentives in a way that delivers value creation and not destruction, both of a company and an asset?
I think where it starts is with management teams setting short and medium term decarbonization goals. They're quantifiable, or they have like underlying action steps that get you to that place. And then from there, I think it's up to the compensation committee to incorporate that into compensation plans. Typically, I think best practice would be to put most of the stuff in LTIP, typically performance shares, since this is not just a 1 year and certainly not a linear journey. You know, it's going to be a lumpy one that's longer term in nature. And in terms of how you tie it to value creation as opposed to value destruction, clearly we want these goals to be added to the business, not just cost centers. We want them to do other things that enhance the value of the business, whether it's directly reducing costs or resulting in efficiencies, which often seems to be the case, enhancing social license to operate, things like that. We don't want to be prescriptive in terms of which goals the companies are actually setting, unless there's something just clearly wrong with it, or it's just obviously out of step with what their competitors are doing. So we, really have to rely on management's judgment to set appropriate goals for the business.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nile. And in terms of opportunity sets, I know we've spoken in the past about the opportunity set that you see with methane abatement. I mean,
yes.
How do we change the narrative within the industry so that methane abatement is perceived to be a business benefit and not a cost? I know we've heard a lot about that today, but it'd be good to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I do have some thoughts. I find in the companies that we've talked a lot in the last 2 months or so, probably 25 or 30 operators, specifically upstream, to a lesser extent in the midstream. The ones who have done the work of identifying their abatement opportunities within methane are almost universally finding that these things either are net negative cost or they're cost neutral at worst, at least here sort of at the onset in the first tranche of decarbonization opportunities that they're undertaking. And so that leads me to think two things. One is that, we're hearing this stuff. I know other investors are too. And so we need to repeat and sort of disseminate, encouragement along these lines to other companies who maybe are not at the leading edge. And then the other thing is that, I know industry folks talk to each other a lot, of course, as they should, sharing best practices. The ones who are doing the good work need to communicate this as well and kind of create a self-reinforcing loop. So I think if companies are hearing from their peers about what's working, and then they're hearing from their shareholders in particular, reinforcing that we got your back on this, I think that should be pretty powerful.
Brilliant. And then just finally, I know we've also spoken in the past about marginal well retirement and how the industry needs to start establishing credibility on this front. I know it's a topic that you touched on and sort of came up in your panel discussion today. I mean, what would be a good first step in your opinion? How does the industry approach this?
It's a good question. It's also a fascinating and difficult question. I have some thoughts, but admittedly, I've talked to a lot of upstream operators about this, and I've heard a really wide variety of answers. Just from my perspective, where I sit within CalSTRS and what our goals and objectives are for companies in our portfolio, I think a good first step would be simply reporting your P&A activity as an operator along the same lines as the reporting they're already doing in their 10K. So for, they're already giving us tables on how many wells they've drilled each year, dry, productive, in some cases by region or basin, number of producing wells along the same format. So give that to us for your P&A activity, and also call out how much you're spending on that. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a 10K, because obviously that invokes certain exposures. So companies that could be in the same, in the sustainability report, that's totally fine. But give us the information. Let's see who's active, who's not active, and who the better actors are. My suspicion is, as we've seen with a lot of other issues, there's probably a lot of good stuff going on. It's just they're not telling us about it. And so there's probably a good story to tell there. Just yesterday I was meeting, for example, with large independent who told me that they are very active using marginal abatement cost curves in their analysis of like decarbonization opportunities, but they just weren't disclosing that for some reason. So I think there's another area where like good operators need to step forward. They probably do have a good story to tell, and ultimately there are some bad actors out there. I mean, it's a very vast industry, so it's almost inevitable. But if the good operators step forward and show the world what they're doing, that'll cast into relief, then we'll know where to focus.
Brilliant. Thanks, Noel. I think it's a topic we could talk about for much longer. And look forward to following progress in the space and having more conversations in the future. But in the meantime, thanks for joining us.